This episode of Bonfireside Chat is brought to you by Latchkey Kingdom, which is a webcomic done by Nick Daniel.
It's at latchkeykingdom.com. It is a adventure comic, a colorful adventure comic about kind of whimsy, a sense of humor. It follows Willa Dragonfly, who is a lady adventurer, and she kind of goes through dungeons and meets colorful characters in a fantasy world that is video game literate, but not from a specific video game, and is not a video game podcast. Or, excuse me, it's definitely not a video game podcast, and it's also not a video game webcomic. If you're thinking about video game webcomics, you probably hate them, because a bunch of them are shitty. But this transcends that and is much bigger. Yeah. He's a very talented man, and I enjoy it quite a bit.
So you can find that at latchkeykingdom.com. Thank you, Nick.
Some of our landings were desperate adventures. We are now prepared to meet the inevitable counterattacks with power and with confidence.
All people come here for the same reason, to break the curse.
You're no different, I should think. Go through the door and trot along to the kingdom.
But remember, hold on to your souls. They're all that keep you from going hollow. Oh, I'll fool you no longer. You lose your souls. All of them. Over and over again.
My name is Gary Butterfield.
My name is Kole Ross.
And you're listening to Bonfireside Chat, a cursed favorite.
Yes, and this week we are beginning our Dark Souls 2 season proper by talking about kind of our introduction and generalities, Things Betwixt and Majula.
Majula.
Yeah, tasty.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then just so we have seen, just from a huge flood of support and iTunes reviews and stuff, that a lot of people are just now checking out the show. So we thought this would be a good time to kind of restate the thesis. I think that's a good thing for shows to do every once in a while. Every episode might be somebody's first. Yeah. So we wanted to tell you what we're about. If you've been sitting patiently, go make a popcorn or go watch a Star Wars or whatever it is you kids do these days. And new people, listen up.
Listen up.
Yeah. Round up.
It's about time for you to learn some science.
Yeah, you're going to have to listen to this whole pack of podcasts.
Yeah.
I'm going to sit here while you listen to all of them, and then we'll see how much you like podcasts.
Yeah. But you know what? That always seemed like a really good way to make somebody like smoking.
Yeah, or die.
Yeah.
I don't know if that you can actually die from that, but I feel like similar to dying from StarCraft, I feel like somebody in a Korean internet cafe has probably died from doing the exact same thing.
Smoking?
Yeah, like just smoking an entire carton of cigarettes.
Yeah.
Anywho. So we mentioned the name of the show, and what we're doing is we're taking the Souls games and some of their influences and lineages, and we're kind of being an area guide. We're going area by area. The first season we called it Your Guide to Lordran, and this is your guide to Drangleic.
Yeah, so think of it as a very, very zoomed-in book club. Where we take each area and we talk about, the mechanics and the things that you're going to see and the things that you're going to do. But we're also going to try and draw some connections. One of our favorite things to do on here is to kind of speculate wildly about the lore. And that is often aided by the various guests that we have on. We don't have any guests on right now because that's just kind of a thing that we do for these introductions. Just the two of us, me and Gary and me. Shooting from the hip and whatnot. But yeah, everybody kind of brings their own perspective.
Yeah. And as we encounter things, we'll talk about them. We're going area by area. We've got our breakdown. It looks like it's going to be about 17 episodes, regular areas, plus some specials like we did in the first season. Mm-hmm. So if you were a fan of the PvP episode, the speedrunning episode, we've got a couple ideas for those. Those will come later. They may not come at the very end when we're like desperately kindling the bonfire and trying to keep the show going, even though we've run out of game. We'll probably try to spread those out a little bit. Yep. But yeah, so it's going to be about that many episodes. It's going to take us through about November.
Yep. Yep, and just so you know, we release the main episodes once every other week, and then on the off weeks, we do what we call our appendices, which are the errata. We make mistakes. We are human, especially since this is such a new game. There's always new stuff to discover. And when we are wrong, or when we draw a false conclusion, or when somebody presents something that is way more intriguing than the thing that we initially say, we will put it in there, along with general responses to the area that we put out.
Mm-hmm. So if you end up having anything you'd like to contribute, if you're sitting around listening to the podcast and thinking like, God, I just want to say this, you can. If you go to Duckfeed.tv/contact and share with us your thoughts, we always appreciate it, and that's where those live.
Yep. So you'll get to hear the thoughts on Things Betwixt and Majula next week. Kind of one big note that we want to give to you is that briefer is better. We will tend to do some editing for content and time in order to really make your points pop. But just as a general rule, that is the best practice.
Mm-hmm. And also limit so since we're going area by area, we ask you to as well. So if you can limit your comments, not to just kind of general Dark Souls gushing, right. Which we do. We have the platform for that. We're guilty of that as well. But just since we're kind of focusing on an area, kind of limit your responses to that if you could. It'd be appreciated.
Yeah.
We should take an opportunity to reiterate our spoiler policy.
Yeah. So in our first impressions cast, we kind of laid out that we're going to be a little bit lax with spoilers, by which we mean that since this game is so much more open, it would be difficult to mention one thing without alluding to something else. Right.
Right. What Cole's trying to say is Solaire is the end boss. So if you're wondering who you fight at the end of Dark Souls 2, it's Solaire. He's got a gigantic sun shield and a sun sword, and he's firing sun rays, and you're on the surface of the sun. And
he summons Anastasia's tongue.
Yeah, exactly. So that's what he's trying to say.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. We can't determine what order you're going to do these things in, and so unless you want to listen to them in your own order, which is fine. But if you're playing along, we kind of have picked a general path through the game that we feel is fine. What
a weird way to listen to the show. Like if you were to William S. Burroughs it, listen to it in a random order. That's an odd throw it on shuffle. That would be an odd experience.
Oh, just kind of I'm not going to go to the Sinner's Rise from here. I'm going to the Lost Bastille. I'm going to go so and so. You tend to graze, right? So
I guess that's true. So we're going to not tell you that Solaire is the end boss until it gets revealed in the game. But we are going to like Cole just said, Sinner's Rise. There's a sinner. There's a rise. We're not going to be that cagey about area names and some character names, things like that. So we're going to use our discretion. If we ever feel like we have to skirt the line to make a point, we'll throw in a warning at the beginning of it. But we're going to try to keep that to a minimum. Yeah. It's a pain in the ass to fast forward your iPod.
Yeah, definitely. Yep. But I think that just to underline all of this, I just want to say we respect how magical that first playthrough is as you're discovering everything on your own. And we want to preserve that as much as possible. Within reason for the purposes of a discussion. So that is where our hearts are at. And if we fail at that, know that we tried.
Yeah, and also as just kind of a general rule, there are connections to Dark Souls 1 in this game. We are going to talk about them. Everything in Dark Souls 1 is on limits. Mm-hmm. So the fact that you fight Solaire's dad in the end of Dark Souls 1, and then you fight his son in Dark Souls 2, and it's just about killing an entire family line as a series. Exactly. That is all. So play Dark Souls 1, which of course you have.
Right.
But
Yep. It's good. It's a good game.
Yeah, it's great. Yeah, 7 out of 10. Pretty decent. As it has become a tradition for us when we did the Demon Souls episode and we did the Kingsfield series, we've kind of started off with a series of differences between this and the games that preceded it. We've broken them down into kind of 13 broad categories that have some kind of smaller points, and we're going to go through those and kind of explain them. So think of this as Dark Souls 2 for the Dark Souls 1 player.
Right. So I'll begin with number 1, which is movement. This game feels different, Gary. Not just in that it's lighter and airier, kind of like a Demon Souls, but maybe even more so because there are differences to things like falling, roll speeds, jumping. They're all different, and they're all kind of affected by this new stat, which is agility, which goes up with your adaptability and endurance. Yeah, which primarily is the speed of your actions and your iframes and rolling. It's actually, this is one of a weird stat that is people on the internet are still saying we don't know everything that it does. Right.
We haven't gotten into that like crazy Dark Souls science testing phase with it, but I think you'll feel a difference. And for the longest time when I sat down to play this, I couldn't tell if this was actually different because I was playing on a PlayStation 3 controller.
Yeah.
And that was actually what was going on. But it is very different, but you get used to it, and it just feels like a second skin now. So, number 2, combat is pretty different now. Backstabs work differently. You're not invincible when instigating them. They're easier to miss. The parry timing is a lot tighter. Mm-hmm. There is guard breaking now as opposed to kicking, which has kind of a mechanical critical hit effect that's a little bit more pronounced. And but however, there's still a huge emphasis on poise and stability in your equipment.
Right. Yep. In addition to that, if you are going to be rolling high poise, you may be able to do things like dual wielding, which is now totally a thing. There are animations for every alternate offhand attack, but it's difficult, because you're rolling without a shield, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's kind of a cool, high damage glass cannon kind of way of doing it. You actually attack much. Something that just came out today, Emerald, who's a Dark Souls YouTube person, just put out a video that if you alternate your attacks when dual wielding, you're much faster than just hammering on R1.
Right.
There's lots of little effects like that kind of come into it. You have a lot more items available to you, but durability is entirely different. Rather than it being a rather kind of rare experience where some of your equipment will break, your equipment is degrading whenever you use it and is replenished by bonfires. So that kind of, if you're going to be in a longer level, such as No Man's Wharf, your weapons are likely to break before the end, and you have to be prepared for that.
Yeah. So it is good to have some backups with you.
Right.
Because,
and when something breaks, it is not gone forever.
Right.
You can fix it.
Yeah, which has a huge impact on certain rings, too. It changes the way that things kind of flow. In addition, death works pretty differently, too, for both you and your enemies. You hollow progressively, so as opposed to being a binary thing, you lose 5% of your total health each time. And
I think it's 10%.
10%? Oh, okay.
Yep.
Cool. Down to 50, although that can get even lower if you do if you have a lot of sin, down to like 10% of your health, which is nuts.
Yeah, I'm learning that for the first time now. I did not realize that was tied to sin.
Mm-hmm.
Huh.
Yeah.
That's nuts. And it makes a huge difference. It's kind of splitting the difference between the way that Dark Souls did it, where hollowing was just kind of a condition and had certain gameplay ramifications, but nothing on your health, and Demon Souls, where, in soul form, you're automatically at half health. Right. And it has a kind of a narrative kind of sense in that simulating you slowly losing your grip, to humanity, which I love that about it.
Yeah.
Things get more desperate, and you're punished for trying the same thing over and over again. Mm-hmm. You have to try something new because when it doesn't work, there's actually consequences for it.
Right. So.
Yeah,
and it definitely mirrors your own personal descent into hell as you mess up.
Yes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And one of the effects this has is one of my favorite moments or gameplay experiences in any of the Souls games is when you get to where you had nothing to lose, and it takes longer to get there now. Being hollow with 0 souls and no bloodstain in Dark Souls 1, you can try everything. But here, it puts that off a little bit longer. And I found myself trying, kind of YOLOing it less frequently than I did in the earlier games.
Far more risk averse.
Yes. Yeah, which I think ended up being just adding to that sense of trepidation. That's part of the series. Further, there are enemy death limits now. If you kill an enemy a certain number of times, I think it's around 15, they will stop respawning. Yep. And this kind of serves a dual purpose. One, it's a little bit of an anti-frustration measure. If you run through an area that many times, some guys won't show up, and it'll be a little bit easier. But it's also to discourage farming, and that's the kind of stated reason from. But it kind of has both effects. And that's new for the Soul series. The game world does not automatically totally restart every time you rest at a bonfire.
It's a little humiliating when you
first get somewhere. Yeah, and there's nobody there.
Yeah.
Who was the first enemy that you ran into that with?
I'm not sure. I think it started happening even at that first one in the Huntsman Cupes. Keeps. But it's most noticeable like right now with it first started happening to me with the Forest of the Giants. Huntsman Keeps, the last bonfire leading to Undead Purgatory. Since I made that run so many times, it is now just a complete like desert.
Yeah, you do it.
Yep.
Yeah, it's fine. It's all yours. The first one that I ran into, I didn't know about the mechanic when I first went into it, but was one of the jailers at the Lost Bastille. And that was really surprising. It's like, where the fuck is that guy? And I kept kind of looking over my shoulder, thinking, he had wandered into some corner and was going to sneak up on me. But
that is a little unsettling because you expect the world to be static.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, when you first learn that, it is a big change. But generally for the better. It's not something that I feel like I've been hungering for the entire time. But some people on the internet are freaking out about it, and I don't think it's a terrible thing.
Yeah.
Let's talk about class.
Class. You got to have class.
Yeah, let's have class. Let's put on the Ritz.
They're different.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Totally different than Dark Souls 1 or Demon Souls. There is no pyromancer and no thief. And they've added the swordsman, which is I guess closest to the
Wanderer.
The Wanderer from Dark Souls 1. He's a dex-based character, but he is a dual wielder right from the start. And starts with upgraded weapons,
right?
Which is a huge plus.
Yeah, a huge plus, especially because you're picking your classes for kind of that early game benefit. You can turn everybody into anything. But that is a pretty big up for you.
There's also the adventurer or explorer. What's the name of the?
That's the explorer, which is closest to the thief, but it's slightly different. Starts with more consumables.
Yeah, which is an interesting way to take it. Mm-hmm. Like his stats aren't great, but he has lots of items, and some of which you don't get for a long time. Starting with a Pharos Lockstone is kind of a big deal.
True. Additionally, I forgot to put this in the notes, but your gifts are kind of less significant now. Yeah. There's nothing as clearly overpowered as the Master Key,
right? And that single-handedly makes it less significant. In Dark Souls 1, there was just the choice of like Challenge Run or Master Key,
right?
And that was it. There's no reason to ever take anything else. Here they're spread out a little bit more. Everyone thought there was a joke item in this petrified chunk of wood, but it is not.
Nope.
Actually, a joke item has an immediate use.
Yep.
In the game. They've done a bunch of rebalancing as well. Mm-hmm. To the game. So the formerly sorcery was kind of easy mode in Dark Souls 1.
Nope.
And nope, no longer. Sorcery is hard mode now.
Yeah.
And clerics used to suck. I mean, they were fine as fighters, but miracles sucked, and clerics more or less sucked. And now they're great.
Yep.
Like now it's kind of the until you get pyromancy, it's kind of the OP magic class. As I'm getting a little bit further and experimenting with casting in my second playthrough, there is a little bit more balance to the sorcerer-cleric dichotomy than I originally thought. Just in that, sorcery, you get so many casts.
Right.
And as opposed to clerics, and you don't get very many at all. But the spells are just so underpowered.
Yeah.
And starting as a sorcerer, you don't have enough strength to wield a short sword. Like you are so weak.
Yeah, you're fragile too. Like I think you have like three vitality or something.
Yeah, it's kind of incredible.
Yeah.
Deprived are totally unviable now as well.
Yep.
Not unviable, but it's the only soul level 1 class, and they have 6 and everything. Which it should be noted, someone just recently completed the soul level 1 playthrough of this game.
Oh, cool! Wow.
Yeah, which is pretty crazy. 6 in every stat. So.
Wow. Yeah. No, that is that is nuts. I didn't think about that because Pyromancer at least had something of a 1-up.
Well, it had a huge 1-up.
Yeah.
Because the strength of your pyromancy has nothing to do with your level. Mm-hmm. So you're pretty powerful. Like a soul level 1 pyromancy does pyromancy just as well as a soul level 100 pyromancy.
Yeah.
And that's no longer the case. So this person, that sounds tedious. Like I didn't love my soul level 1 run of Dark Souls, but I will not do one of Dark Souls 2. I don't think that does not sound fun to me.
Yeah. But I think the lesson here in general, is that might does make right, and especially in the early games, having the wrong spec, especially something that can't soak damage, it's a bloodbath, and it is definitely hard mode.
Yeah, and I wonder how much of that's going to change. Like right now, strength weapons have such a huge advantage, and being strong. I wonder if any of that will get rebalanced. Because that happened multiple times with Dark Souls before I even came to it. And I'm curious how much of that will remain.
I'm kind of curious, too, because every time you start up, at least on the PlayStation 3, it tells you about calibrations.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering if that is, on-the-fly difficulty rebalancing.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah, I wonder. I mean, I would be surprised. And one of the things I'm fairly certain they're going to change are item drops. Like, there are certain areas where I'm getting item drops that make no sense, and I'm getting tons of them.
Yeah, I've got, I feel 15 slabs.
Yeah, I think that's probably a mistake.
Yeah.
But, I could be wrong. Yeah. Covenants are different.
Yeah, so there are fewer straight up broken covenants, just because the server architecture makes things like the Way of Blue viable, whereas it would have been a broken mess before, right?
Yeah, and it's still right now there aren't tons of people invading, so the Way of Blue only kind of works now, but it would have been a straight up Gravelord in Dark Souls 1. Yeah. And there are no covenants that are as broken as Gravelord or as redundant as the Dragon Bros. Mm-hmm. In this game. Like, all of them kind of have a purpose, and the purposes are more varied. The PvP covenants are much more interesting, specifically the Rat Bros.
Oh, God.
And the Belfry Guardians, are just, they have kind of like adding kind of new gameplay modes. Mm-hmm. Like, playing as the Rat Covenant or playing as the Belfry Covenant are kind of like, one's almost like a variation on like a capture the flag. Mm-hmm. In Dark Souls, and the other one is, like a trap, like a defense, like almost like a tower defense.
Yeah.
Version of the game. Like, it's very interesting. Mm-hmm. What they've done with covenants. I'm a really big fan.
Yeah, definitely. So. And it's like not a lot of it's like, okay, so the area protection stuff is not that different. Like there were area protection ones before, but it's so much more interesting, like you said.
Yeah. Well, in this one, the area protection. Are you talking about the Belfry or the?
Oh, I'm talking about both. Like, before, it was just either the forest or Dark Anorlando. Like this gives you that purpose, right?
Well, and throwing the goal in there, throwing the lever in there, and kind of putting defenses in front of the lever. Mm-hmm. You can just go there to fight, but trying to bring in a team to ring that bell is pretty neat. And then just the way that the rats work, where they actually draw unwilling people into their world, like, that's brilliant. Yeah. That's so good. Mm-hmm.
Kind of moving on to point 5, the multiplayer. So as we kind of alluded to with the covenants, dedicated servers mean that it's much more reliable. I'm finding so many more summon signs now.
Oh yeah,
than before.
Yeah. And you have to, if you see a summon sign, jump on it, because somebody else will grab that helper.
Oh yeah, like right away.
And if you want to be summoned, no problem. Mm-hmm. Throw down your sign and you'll get. I fought Old Sinner with people maybe 5 times in about 25 minutes, which and that's including the time of the fight. Like, that would have been unthinkable in Dark Souls 1. So. Very, very cool. Mm-hmm. Working multiplayer. Matchmaking is really different now. They made some attempts to address the kind of soul level 1 gankers with endgame equipment and really low level by having something called soul memory, which is how many souls you've spent, regardless of how you've spent them. And so it's match made on that basis, which means that you're less likely to run into a guy and run into a level 10 Dick Wraith at level 10 when you're on the first time through the game. Yeah. The idea is that it's a little bit more evenly matched.
Is it how many you've spent or how many you've earned?
I think it might be how many you've earned, actually.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's a little stat in the upper right of the screen, and I've only been invaded a couple times, and my win-loss ratio is perfectly even. That's not necessarily evidence, but that does happen to be true. Right. I did not feel like I got invaded by anybody who's super overpowered.
Yeah, I've only been invaded like twice, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But as we said before, not a lot of people are invading right now.
Mm-hmm. Have you been invaded while hollow?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, you get invaded by a hollow now. That is no longer protection. Yeah. So, if you want protection, play offline.
Yep. So, also, co-op is now timed. Mm-hmm. So that is something new, which kind of, on one hand, makes it so that co-oping with somebody through a level, like from like a non-boss bonfire, is less of a thing. But like I feel like that being a fact makes it so that I remember that I can co-op with somebody in just kind of a regular area.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it depends on what soapstone they're using.
Yeah.
How long it lasts. So I think if someone's using the regular soapstone, I've never had somebody unsummoned. Okay. Like the levels that I've actually summoned people for, which are not very many. Mm-hmm. I mostly have done bosses, but for the levels, people get to the end.
Right.
So yeah, I don't know what the exact time limits are though, and that's something that will come out, I think. Speaking of summoning someone right next to a bonfire.
Yep. Point number 6 here. Bonfires are not entirely different, but they function very, very especially. You can now teleport from any bonfire, not just a couple. Teleport from any to any, right? Yep. And the bonfires are much, much more plentiful now.
Mm-hmm. Yep, and as soon as you unlock them too, there's no Lord Vessel or anything to get.
Right.
And the biggest thing, other than just kind of an frustration feature again, is this changes the level design in a huge, huge way. So the levels are really these kind of granular bits from bonfire to bonfire. Once you get, from one end of a very difficult area to the other, unless you want to, there's no reason you'll ever have to go back through there.
Right.
So they've taken those individual kind of units of level and up the challenge quite a bit. And it makes it feel a little bit more Demon Souls-y. Like Demon Souls had discrete levels as well, and this does too.
Yeah, each level is like a series of sprints now.
Yeah. And it allowed them to do, just kind of, I don't necessarily, I like the open world part of Dark Souls 1. I don't feel like this is an unequivocal win, but I'm glad that they didn't just kind of make this choice to make easy mode. They also, it was very considerate. At your bonfires, you can light a torch, which leads us into point 7, which is that light plays a huge role in the game, both from a visual perspective and from gameplay.
So you have these torches, you can light sconces. There are certain areas, kind of like the, oh gosh, I'm forgetting the name of it already. I'm going hollow, Gary. What is it? The Tomb of Giants? Yeah, there we go.
Yeah.
Like the Tomb of Giants or Blighttown to a certain extent, where visibility is a real factor. But because of the shadows and because of just this kind of revamped graphics engine, visibility is a huge, huge deal.
Yeah, it makes a lot of things easier. There are enemies that react to it. It makes mimics easier to spot. If you light things up, there are certain kind of mechanisms you can activate that'll light up an area and make a really huge difference.
Yeah,
it's a big deal.
So you're building a birdhouse in your soul.
The flame butterfly and the canary in the lighthouse.
Yep. Yep. So number 8 is what I am cutely calling sprawl, not tall. So we spent a lot of time in Dark Souls 1 talking about how vertical the world is and how it kind of folds over itself a lot. This is structured entirely different than that. There is some shortcutting and there are kind of some parallels, but in general, this is a gigantic hub and spoke kind of thing. When you're going down a path, you're following it to its terminus, and this game just keeps giving.
Yeah, you will round a corner and think that you are nearing the end of something, and actually just get that little title card sound and have a whole new area to explore. That verticality too, I think part of this comes up into this next kind of sub point, is that you're exploring a bigger gameplay area. You're also exploring a bigger area in the fiction, in that this is a continent. There's an in-game map that has lights that you eventually find that has lights that correspond to different lights that you light up, and it's huge. And time and space is, this is spacey-wacy the same way that Dark Souls 1 was timey-wimey. There are certain paths you'll take and geographical relations which make no fucking sense.
Right.
There's one specific area where you get through an area that you can see daylight, you go up an elevator and end up underground, essentially.
Yep.
You're going through portals, or you are just, traversing space in a way that doesn't, necessarily make sense. It doesn't have to. But it's a different way of doing things. There's less of that, I can see, Ash Lake from, Tomb of the Giants. Yeah. There's a little bit less of that.
I feel like it's a little bit of a loss in that regard, because that was one of my favorite things about the world from Dark Souls 1.
Yeah, I think I would agree. The one thing I do like about it is that kind of, as soon as you get to the floor, you get out a shovel kind of feeling. The fact that these things just kind of, I love the bigness of it.
Yeah.
The fact that this game kind of, I kept running into new areas when I thought I was done. That was a joy, because I love this series, and more to play is a good thing.
Definitely.
But I agree with you as far as the world design. I think that was a little bit stronger.
And what is a world if there are not people in it? So point number 9, the NPCs. The quests work just a little bit differently, in that most of them are based around combat. So as you are following them from place to place, a lot of them are viable boss summons to go into a fight with you, and it is imperative that when that is an opportunity, you bring them in with you, because there are a lot of them where you can't see the end unless you have fought with them at every opportunity.
And they survived.
Yes.
Which is infuriating.
A little bit.
That's the part that drives me fucking up the wall, because just having to battle with them, I think that makes tons of sense. This person's going to trust me more if we've done battle together. That's really cool. But some of these people are really difficult to keep alive, and it just feels very, very random.
Yeah.
Sometimes. So that's pretty frustrating. But they generally work a little bit differently. And I'm slowly kind of unraveling these. I don't know all of the NPCs' stories. Right. At this point, I missed a lot.
Me too.
There were entire NPCs I missed my first playthrough of the game. So I'm still kind of getting the sense of this. I don't know exactly what Prepare to Cries we will have from Vadi this season, but yeah. This game has really feels like a synthesis of the games that came before. So it has this very strong sense of lineage, which, ends up being appropriate since that ends up being a story theme in all of these games as well. Right. It's Demon Souls as shit. Like there is, it's very dark. It's very grim. There's a hub world. There's those level designs we mentioned before. The teleportation. There's a maiden, who does your leveling up. You have that HP penalty. We had mentioned all that before. So it's super Demon Souls.
Yeah. It's also Dark Souls as shit. It's a direct sequel, and it's set in the same world, centuries or maybe millennia later. But it is definitely, the same cosmology. Hint, there are hollows. Hint, it works much the same way.
Right.
And there are kind of resonant themes and these direct lore connections that are present throughout. Right.
Yeah, very much a sequel. So if I was expecting something a little bit closer to a Demon Souls to Dark Souls relationship, and it's way closer in that.
Right.
Also, I'm really glad that we played the Ancient City because this game with Kingsfield is shit as well. Not least of which because you just kind of hump walls like a Wolfenstein to open them, but also in that you are incredibly underpowered at the beginning.
Yeah.
Which is the truth of every Kingsfield game, and not necessarily the truth in Dark Souls, where you can get a weapon that does 200 damage, 5 minutes after starting.
Right.
That's not the case here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So there's definitely you can see the history of this and everything that led up to it, and we benefit from that perspective.
When you get to the Mecha Solaire at the end, you see the Armored Core kind of influence, and the 8-bit Mecha Solaire from 3dgame.core.
3dgame.core. Point number 11, and this is a little bit more touchy-feely. This is just about the lore and themes in general. So I'm going to drop a 50-cent word here. But,
yeah, I saw that in the notes. I was like, did Cole get a fucking calendar?
No,
Wait.
Sorry. Yeah, no, but just but it's interesting to me. So in both. Let's see here. So definitely in Dark Souls, you got the feeling that you were in one kingdom that was in decline, right? Mm-hmm. But in this one, you're kind of looking at, and here's the word, a palimpsest, which is a word for like a document that has been like scrubbed and then written over again, or more accurately, ruins on top of ruins on top of ruins. Like when they found the example of when they found ruins that may have been Troy, like the formerly thought to be mythical city of Troy. They thought, here's ruins. This might be Troy. It's in a place that makes sense. Then they dug deeper. Oh, this is like Troy 1.0, Troy 2.0, Troy 3.0. What you're seeing here is a bunch of societies that are kind of like layered on top of each other. And there are people who've been around who've like been like witness to like all of it. Right.
Right. You're going to run into people from different time periods, and this bears out multiple ways. You don't learn about it right away, but there are multiple item descriptions and characters who straight up just say this. This isn't the first kingdom, this isn't the last kingdom. Right. To be here, kind of like an unsatisfying cosmology for it. But part of what I was when I started seeing those Dark Souls 1 connections, I kept thinking of it's not my favorite game in the world, but that BioShock Infinite. There's always a girl, there's always a lighthouse thing. Like there's always a kingdom, there's always a king. There's always somebody trying to hold on to power. Right. There's always, and that kind of those thematic circles continue.
Yeah. And that kind of plays into, larger things of like degradation and renewal, things about the flame and rekindling and, everything that we saw in Dark Souls 1, but also hollowing, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. Ashes. And the idea of being, they said that the watchword for this game was cursed. And several people will explicitly say, there's a character in this first area we're going to talk about who just says, hey, you're just going to keep doing this forever. Being alive is actually the curse. Ha 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 ha. Those thematic things just kind of keep going. And what really, makes me really look forward to November, other than just, Super Tuesday, is that, the things we're learning from this game will rekindle and reflect on arguments we had about the cosmology of the earlier games.
Right.
Like the fact that this takes place in the same world and has a kind of different, looks at the same themes, but from a different angle, gives us a more complete story of this thing that we already, examined to death.
Right.
Like I thought there was nothing more to say about, about what to do with the old one in Demon Souls, but there probably is. And this game kind of reflects on those themes anew.
Part of the fun of this is playing it and looking for those connections and trying to see like, okay, so like what's really going on here? Like what does this have to do with Dark Souls 1? And so kind of like playing it with that kind of forensic, frame of mind, you really benefit from having previous knowledge, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. One of the things that I mentioned this earlier, but I would like to do it as an episode. Talk about New Game Plus.
Yeah.
At some point, it's a thing now, and it's a serious thing. I'm on the record as saying I don't care for New Game Plus in Dark Souls 1 because it just numbers are bigger. Your numbers are smaller, enemy numbers are bigger. That's it. Now there are new enemies, new designs, enemies, and new configurations. Bosses will ambush you. There are boss arenas that change. You get totally different items with totally different lore.
Yeah.
Implications. It's a huge deal, and I'm super excited to actually get through a playthrough I feel good about and start working my way through New Game Plus and kind of digging deeper.
Right.
It's made to be an onion, this game.
Oh my gosh! Again, palimpsest.
Yeah.
Layers on layers.
Yep.
Yeah. And 13 dragons, they still suck. We held up.
Remember when we were talking about that? Like how that arc of from getting better at designing dragon fights.
Yeah. And
it's like, oh, they were so terrible, and now they got pretty good near the end of Dark Souls. But no.
Nope.
Yeah, they're still not. They're not as bad as the dragons in Demon Souls, but
yeah,
dragons are not as cool as you think.
Oh well.
Yeah. So let's fire up the PlayStation 3 and hit start and see what happens.
Long ago, in a walled-off land far to the north, a great king built a great kingdom. I believe they called it Drangleic. Perhaps you're familiar. No, how could you be? But one day, you will stand before its decrepit gate without really knowing why.
After you press new game, you notice the difference right away.
Yeah. Yep. You get this. The cutscene is less like, and back in the day there was there are lords in times of ancient. Like, it is much more immediate. Mm-hmm. The opening cutscene, you get a little bit of that backstory, but you kind of get the sense that this is going to be a little bit more personal and a little bit less about, they're not going to, lay out that world right away.
Right.
And you also don't make a guy right away. You start right in the story and right in the cutscene.
I like that decision a lot.
Me too.
Yeah.
It adds like a sense of immediacy to it. The opening area, which, when we start talking about Things Betwixt, like when you actually gain control of, of your character, I like that set piece and what that does a whole lot. As far as just giving you a sense of desperation, also this opening cutscene is great.
Yes,
like it's so good. So you're seeing, it's essentially it's one of the Firekeepers, talking to the character, but also talking to the player, and saying, what is going to happen to you. Like when people say that this game is going to be, or when they said this game was going to be more explicit, I think this is one of the things they're talking about. Just you have lost everything. You are going to lose everything. And they keep saying that. They say it later as well.
Yeah.
But and you get this amazing image of what's presumably your character looking at a woman holding a baby and them melting, which I take to be your memories fading away.
Right.
And it just looks great. It's just very, very cool.
Very, very gray. It's very desolate, and then it kind of has that contrast of lights that kind of pop in, especially when you see those fireflies that come around. It's less. It makes such a great first impression because Dark Souls 1, like without any context, you're just seeing these goofy gods that are like ridiculous, Seath the Scaleless and Boney McBoneface. That make more sense as video game bosses than characters you should care about. But you're getting glimpses of a backstory that doesn't really matter so much for the for the purposes of what you're going to be doing, but actually does give you a little bit of context for what hollowing means, what this curse is, and the why everybody's being drawn to this land, and the kind of characters you're going to be encountering. Right? It is that desolation and desperation.
Yep. And there's the suggestion, that you could be an important character as opposed to just kind of another anonymous thing. Like you have an idea of, the whole point of you going to this quest, you're going to Drangleic, and it's because you've heard these rumors that, that you can cure this curse. And showing that little scene with the family and everything and reinforcing that you've lost something, you're trying to get something back.
Yeah.
Whereas in Dark Souls 1, you don't really start, the background of the world, but the way that your guy got there, you're just another lost undead.
Yeah.
Your story starts when Oscar lets you out of the cell.
Yeah.
Here, you have this kind of implied backstory which is just really interesting. It's an interesting way to take it.
Yeah, it's an implied backstory and it's agency. Dark Souls 1, you're brought there, on a wing, either fate or a crow or, somebody, like your local constabulary, locking you up in the asylum and Oscar letting you out. It's a bunch of people like making sure you end up in this locked away land of Lordran. And although there's like some weirdness, like you get to Drangleic through this crazy firefly ghost vortex.
We have vortex of water. Yeah, ghost ocean of water vortex.
Yeah.
But you get you are going there on your own, even though I think that when you get there, there's this like a moth to the flame. You are being drawn there by something.
Yeah.
And we don't know what it is. And it looks incredibly painful.
Yeah.
The part where your eyes dilate or instantly, like it just looks so brutal as you're getting sucked into this, sucked into the game.
Yeah.
But you chose to seek it out, whatever it is.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's kind of like Demon Souls in that way, where you are somebody who's venturing to Boletaria for either riches or to save the world, right? Like that was the case in Demons. So.
Yeah, even I think this is just a little bit stronger by doing, as opposed to just plopping you in the middle of a tutorial.
Exactly.
Like that, kind of having a little bit more, not having that, and the world was this section is just, much more interesting to me.
Yeah.
And you're doing it in the middle of a skeleton tornado.
Yep.
Like, yeah, the twister ripped through the newly made graveyard and just picked up a bunch of skelefriends, and it's great. Give me a skeleton tornado. Good God, like. Of course. That's what I want in Dark Souls 3 instead of bone wheels. I want skeletornadoes.
Yeah. So on this week's episode of The Level, we proposed a new podcast called Is It Metal? And then it's very simple to produce. You produce an example of something and then just put in a pre-recorded yes or no. Yeah. Skeleton tornado. Is it metal?
Yeah. Oh, yes. It's like that Is It Racist? Yo, is this racist podcast or Twitter account? And the answer is always yes.
Oh, yeah. Of course.
But yeah, so you wake up after kind of seeing this, and you're in control. You're on this little pagoda kind of dais thing, and you control a character that you have had no say in. You're weak. You're wearing rags. You have no health, and you are in Things Betwixt. The title card pops up.
As we said at the beginning, this episode is brought to you by the wonderful and adorable webcomic Latchkey Kingdom.
Yeah, Latchkey. It's not just an adjective for sad poor kids anymore. It's also a delightful webcomic about Willow Dragonfly, who is a young lady adventurer who kind of goes through this magical video game-esque world, but not from a specific video game. But it is a comic that rewards video game literacy. And it's very charming. It reminds me, the thing I kept coming back to is Bone, Jeff Smith's Bone, which is one of my favorite comics that is suitable for all ages. Yeah. And just tons of, infinite whimsy.
Yeah.
Think about on infinite whimsy.
Even though I am much more comic literate than Gary is, my point of reference on it is Adventure Time. And it definitely has that same sensibility to it, which is high praise.
Yep, the joy of being young and the joy of discovery. So, well worth your time. Head over to www.latchkeykingdom.com and check it out. Well recommended.
So the world might be mended. You have no sense of what you look like either. But based on people's reactions to you, you can tell, yeah, you're just on the edge of being as hollow as you could possibly be, while still retaining control over yourself. Right.
Right. Yep. Yeah. And this is literally kind of an area that exists outside of time and space.
Yeah.
That exists to bring you into Drangleic. It borders on Drangleic.
Yeah, it's like the waiting room or the foyer of this realm. They explicitly say this is limbo.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah, like a purgatory of some kind,
and it has the feel of kind of like the time before the ancient times, or with the arch trees and such. You're in this gigantic crevasse, and you can kind of see the sun above, but everything is craggy rocks and these gigantic petrified trees.
Yeah,
right?
Yep, yeah, and you're starting out. One of the things when you first go through here. You enter this field full of skeletons. Well, one thing, just from a gameplay perspective, one of the things that playing through this made me really realize I love Dark Souls is if you think that you're supposed to go one way, go another way, and there'll be an item. So you should always go the opposite of whatever way you're facing at any time in Dark Souls. And immediately, if you go towards your right in this first little area, you get an item right off the bat.
Right.
And kind of seeing that little hidden stuff is really, really thrilling to me, and a big reason, why I like to play the game.
Mm-hmm.
But you end up this field full of skeletons on the ground. Again, just skeletons. And you see these kind of shapes moving through the grass. They're not hostile to you at this point. These are actually kobolds, which I only knew because of the guide.
Yeah.
Shows a better picture of them.
Mm-hmm.
But
yeah, they're just like frolicking, and it's very unsettling.
Yeah,
because
among,
they're like,
among the bones.
These childlike, dog-like things that are, kind of like almost inscrutable. Like they feel almost like as out of place as the basilisk did in Ash Lake.
Yeah.
just a little bit, like these goofy-looking things in a very lonely and isolated place.
Right, and they are not aggressive. They eventually will become aggressive, and their purpose is to chase you into the next area.
Yeah.
Either if you try to punch them, or if you just just hang out too much, and send you towards a firelit hut. You can kind of do a little bit more exploring here, but we'll go ahead and go into there so we can talk about the next lore bit and the character creation. Even though, if you want to, you can go. I'm sure there are people already who have killed that ogre with their fist.
Yeah.
As be pre-character creation. I'm sure it's happened.
God.
So I wouldn't want to do it, but
it's crazy. Like somebody's probably already played through it with what's her name, Mirabelle's ladle.
So Lobos Jr., who I'm proud to say is one of my favorite YouTube people, and we have him as a confirmed guest on the show, which I'm really excited about. Who's going to be on the season a little bit later, is already talking about doing ladle percent run. But that guy is I have an immense amount of respect for that guy and his insane challenge runs.
Yeah.
He is a living testament to the idea of patience. But yeah, he's already talking about doing that. He also got 3 bosses away from doing the never rest at a bonfire run before getting distracted by chat and accidentally resting on a bonfire. And just there's a clip of it, and he's just like,
not even. It's not that he died.
Nope. No. Yeah, he wasn't even trying not to die. If he died, he just starts over from Majula and just goes. It was just never resting at a bonfire, and just got distracted and sat down on accident. Awful.
Oh, that's too bad. How far was he?
3 bosses away from the end.
Oh man.
So literally, 45 minutes. Maybe from the end, it's just crazy.
I'm sorry for laughing at somebody who is agreed to be a guest on our show, but that's just the worst.
He'll do it again, is the thing. He's just he's a machine.
Yeah.
So
yeah, but you get into this hut, and boy, are these firekeepers mean to you. They're they're these old witches dressed in red, and they don't see, it's not alluded that they're firekeepers just yet. Millibel says it to you. But they're just kind of berating you, saying, "Oh boy, here's another one. Everybody come in here to break the curse." And this one's pretty far along. Just really kind of giving you the business.
And it should be noted that in the opening cutscene, one of them is working on a spinning wheel.
Yep.
These are clearly kind of an allusion to the the threads of fate. I can't remember the name of those characters in Greek mythology.
Like Hecate. No, that was Midsummer Night's Dream. The fates, right?
Yeah, the fates in Greek mythology. Who weave these threads. They're clearly an allusion to that. And finding out that they're firekeepers is a big deal. Like putting the Dark Souls 1 connection immediately on Front Street. One of the things I watched some video, and they pointed this out, and I don't know why it didn't occur to me, but in Dark Souls 1 they say the firekeepers can never meet, and he I think it was Epic Name Bro, and he said now you can see the reason why is if they meet they're not at their fires. These are people who are not doing it, so that's why firekeepers can't meet. It's like, oh yeah, it's because you can't move one of these fucking fires. No shit. Okay. But this is kind of like a retirement home for old firekeepers.
Yeah, outside of space and time. Yeah, and they're also, the Dark Souls 1, it's heavily alluded that the process of being a firekeeper is horrifying. Like it actually mutates you in some way because of the humanity kind of clinging to you. But the fact that humanity sprites aren't a thing means that these are probably a later generation of firekeepers that didn't suffer that particular affliction. Right.
Right. Or they just recovered from it or changed. Or under their robes they have You know, they have all kinds of gross tumors and shit.
Well, I mean, the little sisters eventually became, you know, like proper little girls, right? So
Goiter City, under there, just like a sponge bath for grandma, for Millibeth. It's just you know, ladling corns all day. Next humanity corns.
I can't. Ugh. I can't.
It's terror time at the old folks' home.
Yeah, but they ask you if you can even remember your own name.
Yeah, it's so condescending. Mm-hmm. You know, like and eventually they pull out this humanity sprite or this human effigy, and they say, you know, can you see yourself in it? And that's how you do the character creation.
Yeah,
yeah. There are more. You can give yourself a beard now. Like I have a badass. I look like Solid Snake from Metal Gear Solid 4.
Me too.
And I took the tattoo and moved it over my eye and darkened it so it looks like a patch. Mm-hmm. You can like I look like exactly like Solid Snake in this playthrough. It's great. Mm-hmm. Super cool.
Yeah.
So if you want to play a wizard, you can look like a wizard finally.
Yeah, and you can also have a very fancy mustache. Mm-hmm. So you can look like what's his name from There Will Be Blood.
Yeah, so you can look like Daniel Plainview.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it's great. Like this is much better. Mm-hmm. This is much more fun.
Are there fewer hair options or are they more goofy?
They're goofier.
Okay. Yeah,
they've always been goofy, but
yeah, straight up anime, like anime spikes.
Yeah. You can make yourself a cloud if you want to.
Almost explicitly too with the greatsword. Yeah. But yeah, that kind of sets you out, and then you know the crones. That's probably a bad word, but that's like what they're referred to as on occasion.
Is it a bad word?
I don't know.
Like a slur?
No, you know what? I think it might be like vaguely misogynistic, like calling somebody a hag. I don't know, maybe the old ladies. You can come back here. You're not locked out of this. It's not a secret to come back like it was to the Undead Asylum. But you can come back here, and the purpose that they serve, if you have a special item called a soul vessel, and this is gigantic because I've done this at least once, you can respec entirely.
Yeah, which again is one of those little changes where I feel like not being able to do that in Dark Souls 1 didn't add too much, but it became a weird kind of badge of honor. Like, oh, it makes sense. But now that I can do it, it hasn't made the game easy. It hasn't made it, it hasn't ruined anything.
Right.
And a lot of these kind of ease of use changes that people on the internet are freaking out about, I think are actually pretty positive. Like, oh, I got this weapon halfway through the game that I couldn't use, or I was doing strength and I got a cool dex weapon. I want to try it without starting the whole game over or waiting, 4 more bosses to get enough levels for it.
Yeah.
Like, why? Like, you're not, by getting rid of some of those restrictions, I think that you can concentrate on other things in a way that's really interesting.
Yeah.
So I'm a big fan of this mechanic. You can't do it at will. You can't really abuse it. Like, you only get a couple of these items in a game, but it just means you don't have to wait entirely for a totally different game to change your playstyle.
Every advantage they give you is balanced out. Like, you are justified in taking, like it's not an easy way out, but you're justified in taking whatever favors they'll give.
Yep.
Yeah.
Agreed. The and there's a line here you have in the notes which is great, where again, like the whole function of these characters is that they're talking to the player as well. They say, hey, you're here, you're going to feed on souls to try to break your curse. And then at the end she's like, I'll fool you no longer. You'll lose all your souls over and over again. Like, this is just you are just going to be crushed again and again. Same thing for that opening thing. You're going to end up at the gates of Drangleic Castle and not remember why you're even there. Like, it is so aggressive and bleak.
Yeah.
Speaking of There Will Be Blood, like it's just like that kind of like dressing down of a person, like soul violence that like I respond to in a big bad way. There's a level of cruelty that like I get pretty into, dialogue wise, like, and just like, oh, that's deliciously mean, and I really like it.
You belong in a jar.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So good.
Oh, yeah.
You meet Millibeth, who is the essentially just they're disorderly, and she's the last in a long line of attendant. She's been attending them for a long time, which narratively lets you know that this is not immediately after Dark Souls. This is long enough for there to be a retirement home for firekeepers and generations of people to take care of them.
Right.
Generations upon generations. She says that there used to be a fourth sister that's missing, who I think we run into later in the episode.
Yeah.
There's not really that's not confirmed, so I don't feel like it's really a spoiler thing, but I'm pretty sure that means the Emerald Herald.
Right.
Who keeps the fire at Majula and has some things kind of in common.
And it lines up with the maidens, just like the role that these, centrally located women have served in the past, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Do you think that they age and kind of become these crones when they stop keeping their bonfire?
That's a really good that is like a really good supposition.
Like they're kind of young and beautiful until they lose this purpose, because all of the ones you run into, I guess, except for even Quelaag, who's like half spider but her top half is smoking. I wonder if that's the case. You get and then just like in real life, like you get closer to retirement. You start aging and dying when you lose your purpose in life.
Oh, it's like somebody who retires and then dies like the next week because they've
they don't have anything to do.
Yeah, and that lines up with hollowing as well.
Yeah.
That might very well be the case.
Yeah, I wonder if that's the case, and that's why she's so young.
And they talk about how the fire heals, how the fire is nourishing. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So there's a bonfire out back. And you can light your torch here. You have a torch, which is the torch mechanics. For every torch you have 5 minutes of light, real time, and you don't have to keep switching out torches like in Shadowgate. Like you just have a timer.
Yeah.
I never ran out of torch. So
yeah, no, nor have I. I also it took me forever to figure out how to light them, because in order to do that, and this is a pro tip for anybody who's new, as you approach a bonfire, you can press triangle or Y.
Toggle.
Yeah, toggle. You toggle the command as opposed to resting at it. You actually light your fire, and there are certain sconces that you can light on. But I kept on trying to find a torch to equip in my offhand, and never was able to. So.
Yeah, me too. That's what I initially thought it was as well.
Yeah.
But we won't quite go into the tutorial just yet, because you can go back. We mentioned that little side passage that we're avoiding, and it does that awesome Dark Souls thing of telegraphing danger. When you first stumble across that side passage, there are huge footprints leading up to a little cave, where there's these amazing ogre creatures that kind of recur through the game that look like one-eyed hippo demons.
Yep.
Somebody read the Wikipedia article on hippos and realized, oh yeah, these things are serious assholes. Like hippos are monster. If they're not spraying diarrhea, they're like one of the most dangerous animals in the world. Like hippos are awful.
Second only to mosquitoes, actually.
Yeah. Hippos are terrible. And somebody read that Wikipedia article and based their ogres.
Yeah.
On that. But you're into an ogre.
Mm-hmm. And it feels like they're designed specifically to fuck over people who kind of know what's happening in Dark Souls, because your initial instinct is going to be, all right, I'm going to get behind this guy and just stab him in the ass a little bit.
Mm-hmm. Wanky. Usually when you see a big articulated butthole in Dark Souls, like an asylum demon, anatomically correct. Yeah. But you just want to get all up in it, because that's what you do in Dark Souls.
Yeah.
And here you are punished for crawling into a butthole.
Because he... because he just straight up falls over backwards on you, like a couple of enemies do, which plays into something that is kind of a theme throughout this. The enemies are smarter in this, much smarter.
It's much harder to kind of chain backstab. I feel like the enemies have a greater variety of moves. If you're turtling, they'll try to guard break you. In general, they are much smarter. The AI has been increased. It feels like.
Yeah.
If you kill this guy, and you don't have to kill him the first time you run into him like Asylum Demon, if you kill him at any point, so I recommend coming back here when you're tough, you get a really interesting ring. Some of the rings from the earlier games reappear, but this is one that's a totally new concept, which is the stone ring. Mm-hmm.
And what this does, and it's a pretty good buff actually, is it reduces the effective poise of your enemies. So if you're not running around with a very big weapon, then you can actually use this to offset that and actually interrupt enemy attacks, which makes it easier to survive if you're not rolling deep with a strength weapon.
Yep. Yeah, very cool weapon.
Yeah.
Yep. And belong to Lothian from Ferosa. Mm-hmm. We'll learn more about Ferosa specifically when we get to about 4 episodes in, where we run into all the Ferosans. Mm-hmm. But yeah, it was the first NPC we see referenced. In the game.
Mm-hmm. So having conquered this kind of optional boss It's weird because there's no boss in this area, and there are more of these later. It's just kind of anomalous. We kind of head in the way the game wants us to go. That is not expressly hidden into. You have a choice. You either run directly to the next area, or you do the tutorials, which are kind of hidden in these fog gates. Not hidden, secreted away in these fog gates off to the left and right.
Yeah, and since I'd gone into this totally blind, I thought these were going to open up hub areas. I didn't realize this was the tutorial. My first playthrough, I started as a soldier, and your weapon you start out with is a broken straight sword, which I used for a long time because I didn't do this tutorial and didn't get the dagger, which is actually a much better weapon despite doing less damage. Right. But yeah, I did not know this was a tutorial my first playthrough until I came back and decided to explore after doing the first area. So... but yeah, then in subsequent playthroughs, you can do it. You get some items similar to, kind of fully exploring the Undegberg or doing the run up to the Nexus in Demon Souls. And you get the developer messages that teach you what's going on. Yeah,
they're on like plinths instead of actual soapstone messages, which makes them stick out. Not more, because those soapstone messages stick out, but it's more obvious that like, oh, I need to read a thing. And they put you into the situations that like, oh, backstab, here's an enemy that won't turn around on you.
Yeah, will never turn around.
Much like the protagonist of an Ace of Base song.
Yeah. Yeah, the protagonist. The person who's accomplishing that quest.
Of not turning around.
Yeah. Like your goal is to not see my heart breaking. Yeah. How do you choose to tackle this?
Begin. Yeah. Also, kind of one of these first areas, you run right into the crows of this game. I gotta say, as far as crows goes, Dinah and Tilla, they take the cake.
Yeah, I like these guys a lot. I love the placement. Again, it's one of those ease of, less obscure things. Like put them right in an area that I can teleport to whenever I want.
Yep.
Make them useful right in the beginning and also make them hilarious. So they like, so previously we had people like sparkly things. And then we liked,
fluffy
what was the
things.
other one? Say what?
What was it? Fluffy things?
No, fluffy, soft.
Soft, yeah, soft.
So soft, give me soft, give me, yeah. And now it is smooth and shiny. Yep. And what that means is anytime you get something in your inventory that says this is an exceptionally smooth, shiny thing, you know where to put it.
Yeah. And what's great about this is it's not like you have a roster of, okay, so the old witch's ring turns into the lantern. Like, it's not like that where you can kind of, break it and know, okay, I can just farm for this and get like enough Titanite to get an early game advantage. It's a lottery. Is what it is.
Yeah. So, which means you don't necessarily need a guide. It also means you can get a very overpowered weapon right off the bat. There's an old whip you can get, which is actually really strong. You can get a channeler trident, which I've never got in Dark Souls 1. And you know what? I've never fucking found in Dark Souls 2 either. I've dropped so many smooth stones. But and you get a kind of a better class of item if you drop the petrified something, which is what people thought was the joke item starting out, but is actually gives you a good chance of getting Twinkling Titanite or a petrified dragon bone, which are the two kind of premium upgrade materials in this game. So,
the other big thing that I banged my head up against for a while until I realized it could come back later was the Two Ogre Beach. Although you don't know it's Two Ogre Beach.
Nope, you think it's just One Ogre Beach.
Yep,
it seemed like a cool place to hang out. And that coffin doesn't take you anywhere. It's so weird.
Yep.
Like I found that. I'm like, oh, I'm going to try it. I'm going to get in that coffin. And screen fades, and you get up, and nothing is apparently different, except you have to fight two ogres. I was like, what the fuck was that?
Yeah.
And did not figure out what it did until hours into the game.
Yep.
Like hours.
All of a sudden I'm a lady.
Yeah, it's a sex change casket.
Yeah, which is my favorite 80s goth band.
Yeah,
kind of like a gendercore kind of thing.
It sounds like James Adomian does Dove Charney from American Apparel as a character. And a lot of it is just him making up funny products. And he's just like, you're going to be called Belial. You like clouds and sidewalk chalk. And I'm going to put you in a popcorn dick casket. I'm like, that's what that reminds you of.
Yeah. So we have a comment from Jason who says, I hope you two can find a way to fit the gender-swapping coffin in Things Betwixt, protected by two Cyclopean trolls into Drangleic's cosmology. Smiley face emoticon.
It does sound a little bit like something that would be in like an actual mythology. in a weird way.
Yeah.
Like, it'd be like some goddess, like Zeus turned into a goat and tricked some girl into having sex with him. And then she wanted to have a boy instead of a girl and like put it in a coffin by the lake. Like, it almost sounds like a mythology thing, but in the actual space of being consistent with Dark Souls mythology, I have no fucking clue. Like, it is such a weird touch.
Yeah. I mean, it may just be that that hollowing works really weird, and the fact that this is outside of space and time puts you further away from your corporeal body, and et cetera, et cetera. I don't know. Things are mutable. Everything changes. Gender is a myth. So.
Yeah. Time is timey-wimey. Space is wacy-wacy.
Yeah.
Gender is Dwender benders.
Yeah. There's also the fact that they may have just put this here to see how fucked up the fan fiction could get.
Yeah, exactly. First I turned into a girl and I fucked 2 hippos.
Yes. Sigmire wanted Seath to love him as much as Gwendolyn.
Yeah. Power stance.
Power stance.
Yeah. So... Anywho, you go through this is pretty much it. There's a bunch of sconces you could light here. And at first I was like, I don't feel like lighting all those. That's not going to do a thing. And then I felt vindicated when I found out that lighting them doesn't do anything. Because, like, what is this? Fucking Zelda? Like, I'm so glad that doesn't make, like, a tone and open up anything. And you never have to light all the torches.
Yeah.
To make a thing happen, which is great. Instead, you go through a cave system and you start seeing messages. This is where people can start throwing in soapstone messages. And you've got a really good note here in the notes. I'll let you read it. I like it a lot.
Yeah. So what I see in this is, like, as we say, so time and time again, time is timey-wimey, space is spacey-wacy. And NPCs say it too, that, like, just the reason that you're seeing these messages is because the barrier between worlds is very thin. And my supposition is that Things Betwixt is kind of this singularity, that it actually is one of the places where those barriers are kind of up. And like, as you are making your transition, out of this cave and into, Majula, which is the world proper, but it's also kind of alluded to that Drangleic is just kind of like separated from everything else. That you're actually getting into a place where, space and time are fractured. And that's why you're seeing these messages, which in the lore are the writings and musings of these desperate people that they're sending out like a message in a bottle between worlds.
Right. And, that's supported by Things Betwixt and how you get there. In the rest of the game, when you travel to a different world, you just come up from a summon sign. And to get into Things Betwixt, you go into a skeleton tornado vortex. Popcorn, dick, casket. To like get there. So like, it is a concrete place as opposed to just this place where reality is permeable. Yep. And that makes a lot of sense.
Right.
But you walk through this cave, you see all these people saying praise the sun and praise the sun, therefore praise the sun.
Praise the sun, therefore wow, such sun.
Yeah, such sun. And the try butt thrust, which is being able to put in that little
one of my favorites was a sign on top of a boulder that just said boulder.
Yeah. That was one of my favorite things to do when I started fucking around with them in Dark Souls 1, was just like statue ahead, stairs ahead, but right in front of it where it's not helpful at all, wall ahead. But you walk out onto Majula.
And boy, do you it's like leaving the vault. It's like leaving the prison in Oblivion. Yeah.
And multiple people in the comments mentioned that it's a kind of a Bethesda moment.
I think we said it in the first impressions too, actually.
Yeah. It is very much like, oh, here is and it's so pretty. Like it's a gorgeous, like it looks like somewhere you'd want to be, whereas the Nexus felt alien and Firelink felt lonely. Like, this is a town. And it looks like somewhere you would vacation almost.
Yeah, it's like a beachside. You can imagine like a warm breeze.
Yeah. It just feels like home. It's great.
The only thing that messes with that is the fact that it's either snowing or there are ashes drifting across the entire area.
Yeah. So. Well, that and the hollowed pigs, the hollowed red soapstone demon pigs. Yeah. The little tiny dark wraiths. But yeah, other than that, very much so. And in kind of the lore, this is the ruins of a seaside town. And because it is so centrally located on these spokes that you mentioned, a town has kind of sprung up there. Like the shops and everything actually make sense because there are travelers, walking from one area to another and need a place to resupply and everything. So much like how towns actually start, that is how this area started.
And people just kind of like go there and stay there by habit. Right. And it's kind of a subplot for one of the NPCs we're going to talk about. Like, it becomes a home because this is a place where, people who've lost everything are kind of gravitated towards, and you're all sharing a common affliction and you're losing your identities together.
Right.
Like,
it's where everybody doesn't know your name.
Yeah. Everybody knows your name for a while, and then they try and eat your face.
Everyone knows your name. You don't know your name.
Yeah.
So,
you have mementitis.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah.
So initially, the first thing you see here is there's a huge landmark you have to kind of go, which is this huge kind of lighthouse tower.
Yeah.
Kind of thing.
Yeah, and as you're walking out towards it, you see, that's a bonfire, right? And who's that beside it? But a lady in green.
Yep, with hair covering one eye.
Yeah,
and she's a nice lady.
Yeah,
this is the Emerald Herald. And she is very important. One of the interesting mechanics that we didn't talk about, because it hasn't come up, is that if you kill an NPC in this game and they're a shopkeeper, they become a gravestone. And you can spend souls to summon them back to use them. But the soul cost is more depending on how important the NPC is. And if you kill the Emerald Herald, it costs so much to bring her back.
do you know a number, or is it?
No.
Yeah.
I didn't. I never tried to bring her back. I killed her on just like a one-off character that was entirely to kill her, just to see if you could do it. But I've read people complaining about it online because you're bringing her back to spend souls, and you end up spending a lot of souls just to get her back.
Right.
It is crazy.
Do you know, is that getting her back permanent?
No. You just summon her ghost for like a session.
So every time you have to spend these 100,000 souls.
It's an asshole tax. You just have to pay for killing this innocent person.
Oh man, yeah, that would be. So, dude. Also, does she remain permanently aggro if you hit her?
She never goes aggro.
No.
She just lets you kill her.
Yeah.
So
because I could see like one errant like, I'm going to set my controller down and go refresh my beverage, and just fucking up your game for life.
Here's a thing we'll talk about in a year. In New Game Plus, you get an armor that exudes poison. So anything next to you gets poisoned. And somebody online who's just like, yep, everyone in Majula is dead now.
You're like Pigpen?
Yeah, exactly. You just enter the place and you're just a traveling plague.
You're just like a dander cloud.
Well, you're like the DARPA chief. Yeah. Or you're like Snake, rather.
Yep.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, that would suck. But yeah, she's very lore important, and she kind of sets off your quest, which is she asks you first, are you the new monarch or the pawn of fate? So kind of setting out, kind of like Kingseeker Frampt said in Dark Souls 1, she just says right up at the beginning, do you seek to become the new king? Like, well, I don't know why I came here, but I guess that's one reason, right?
Yeah, you came to break the curse.
Yeah, I don't want to be a pawn.
That's what you want to do. She mentions that you have to go. You're seeking King Vendrick. Who's the person who built the kingdom, and they say he stared into the very essence of the soul, and she doesn't have any answers about him,
right?
Other than that's the thing, and you need to seek him and seek the more powerful souls, seek the great souls.
Yeah, she tells you that your soul is too puny to go up against him.
Yeah,
or to see him rather.
Yeah, and that soul level 1 guy was just like, fuck you. And she mentions a little bit about the people in the town. She eventually gets some kind of additional dialogue, but not quite as much as I wanted.
Right.
And I maybe just haven't done everything with her. But she mentions there's that blue knight who's up at that tower, which we can go visit now.
Yeah. So it's up there. This is an interesting tower. I'm going to read a note here from Take, a longtime contributor, who says, did you know that you can check your death count at the monument by just looking at it under offline mode? I'm up to 101 deaths currently. So this tower, if you examine it, actually shows worldwide how many deaths there are, which is currently in the tens of millions, I think.
Yeah. And it was 4 days in, like at 3 million.
Yeah.
Or something like that. It's so many. And that's such a fun, that was actually something that was in Demon Souls, but it was hidden in that top part of the Nexus you never wanted to go to.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, and actually I just read a thing on Illusory Wall, that blog, that there's a death counter that is coded into Dark Souls 1, but there's no way to access it.
Huh.
That would show your death counter. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we should make a note here. So that we're going to go talk to the crestfallen friend, Salden, up here. But we're not going to talk about every NPC that ends up at Majula. We're going to talk about them when we run into them, and then we'll talk about them getting back to Majula when we get to them. So we'll talk about the people who are there now. But this is very much a hub world where everybody doesn't know your name. And so for right now, we're just going to limit our discussion to who's here.
We're going to be back here. It's not like, you leave Firelink and then come back after you end up on the other side of Blighttown. Like, you're coming back here probably literally 2 times an hour.
Yeah, all the time because of the fact that the Emerald Herald, which we mentioned, is the only person who can level you up, which is a decision I'm not crazy about.
Right.
Like, it adds a lot of loading time and friction, and it makes a sense from a lore perspective that she has this power, and it enforces a rhythm on the game of forcing you kind of to revisit this area, which I think is on purpose given that it's such a crossroads. Like, they want you after you beat a boss to consider a new direction because you might be at the terminus of this spoke. But it feels like like kind of a clumsy way to do it. And on the PlayStation 3, at least, like, the load times are pretty extreme. It takes a long time to teleport, relatively.
Yeah, I'm finding myself really, really looking forward to getting the PC version because of that, actually. Just popping it on an SSD and going hog wild.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep, me too.
Yeah. But yeah. So we're gonna hit them as they come. Crestfallen Salden. There's always got to be a crestfallen guy, just like there's always a girl and there's always a tower. Yeah.
Same voice actor. As the crestfallen warrior.
He's great. His every performance has gotten better.
Yeah.
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 And what's cool is he's downright cheery compared to the other ones.
Well, he's not just sitting in the middle, like he's in a town. Yeah. Like, he's not just sitting staring at a fire forever until he decides to go, throw himself into the throat of a...
He's by the beach. He's in the most gorgeous area.
Yeah, he's retired. He's Jimmy Buffett. So he's just wasting away in Majulaville.
I loved your tweet about... I loved your tweet about how Jimmy Buffett is children's music for adults.
It's totally true. There's a part, Jimmy Buffett, adult man, wrote a song called Cheeseburger in Paradise that the bridge for is just him naming cheeseburger ingredients he likes. Like, he's fucking Barney. Like, it's literally like, I like mine with onions and tomatoes, big slice of ketchup and a french fried potatoes. This chant about burger ingredients. It's like, what am I listening to?
Pine nuts, walnuts.
Yeah. It's fucking insane is what it is. Yeah. But yeah, he has a lot to do with Crestfallen Salden. He's very much a Jimmy Buffett character. And just call me a Salden head because I'm a big fan.
Yeah. No, you're going to rent a houseboat. It's going to be a whole big thing. Yep. Yeah. Get a rent
skeleton houseboat.
Yeah, skeleton. Okay, fan artist, get on that.
Houseboat. Yeah, skeleton houseboat, casket, popcorn.
Yeah.
But one of the things that when you talk to him and you're exhausting his dialogue, we should mention that you should exhaust everyone's dialogue.
Yeah, even if they repeat.
Because you get more mechanical. Yeah, you'll get more mechanical benefits in this than you do in Dark Souls. Is that some of the things, this game being less obtuse, is he says a lot of things, pretty direct to you about how the game works, about how summoning works, and it's right there. How messages work. They just tell you right off the bat. Like, they're not hiding that shit.
Yeah, and even lays out your various pathways out, which is one of the more confusing things about Dark Souls 1, deciding which way am I supposed to go. And really, there is only one correct option unless you're doing some kind of like challenge run. But at the very least, there is a certain amount of clarity and purpose by talking to this guy. And some foreshadowing is like, oh, Hades Tower of Flame. That sounds awesome. Yeah.
And I did not go... Tower of Flame is the new catacombs for that. And I spent a long time in the Tower of Flame without knowing how to get to Forest of the Giants, which I'm embarrassed to say, but banged my head up against that for quite a bit.
Well, it's funny because the pathway to the Forest of Giants is kind of analogous to the pathway to the catacombs.
Yeah,
the way
exactly.
That it's situated.
It's the right way to go now.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, pretty crazy, pretty funny. Yeah. He is actually a Covenant leader. The Way of Blue, which is the coward covenant.
The trophy is called the Covenant of the Meek.
Yep, exactly. And the idea is that if you wear this ring, which you should join the covenant no matter what, because the ring gives you a slight health boost.
Right.
And you have 4 ring slots, so you probably don't have anything better at this point. If you get invaded, it summons somebody from another covenant who can only interact with red phantoms. Like they are only there to fight off red phantoms. Mm-hmm. There are 2 covenants that are kind of locked in eternal struggle, and this is the people. These are the stakes in that covenant. There's one group that wants to protect them, one that wants to kill them. Mm-hmm. And I've never had a blue summon or a blue phantom summon to help me. In all fairness, I ended up taking this ring off pretty quick in the Forest of the Giants, but it's a really cool idea.
And, just adds a little bit. So, you're going to be invaded more often because being hollow is no longer protection against it. They might as well give people who still want to play online an option to get protection from it. And it creates more opportunities for not just, multiplayer to be foisted upon you, but for co-op to be foisted on you, right? Kind of like, okay.
Which is a really cool idea.
Might as well have a buddy, right?
Yeah, agreed. You're also going to find Lenegras the Smith downhill from here. He's locked out of his own shop, which at first I thought, like kind of before I got to the end of the game and kind of exhausted this guy, I thought that this was not his shop. Like, why is he locked out of here? Is he just, he makes a reference, he says something like, this is where I left my tools. And it doesn't make it sound like he owns it. But I can't find anything that shows that he actually doesn't. But I definitely thought there was more to this guy initially. And it doesn't seem like there is. It seems like he just locked himself out of his house and accidentally, somebody
sold the key.
Or I think she probably picked it up.
Yeah.
Which makes a sense with who has the key. But just locks himself out of his house, which is a hilarious, mundane thing to happen.
Yeah.
And he just sits next to a waist-high window that has no glass in it. And just I've broken into some apartments, that I've locked myself out of.
For stereos,
and this guy won't. Yeah, in certain, certain dark times of my life. But this guy won't he won't lift a knee to get in. He could literally fall into his own house, but he won't.
And even still, he says, go fetch my key, chop, chop. Fuck you.
Yeah, this guy's kind of an asshole, yeah.
Hint, if you've ever unironically said chop, chop, go to hell.
Oh, yeah, or if you snapped your fingers at somebody,
to
have them do something. Even if you're on the phone and you want a pen and I'm holding a pen, if you reach your hand out to me and snap your fingers to get the pen, I hate you, and I will always hate you. That fucking sucks. Don't treat people like horses.
Yep.
Give them sound cues to move quicker.
Yeah.
Not acceptable.
Yeah, tip your waiters, please.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. Yeah.
But this is where you can upgrade your stuff. Upgrading works a little bit differently. It's not like you have different smiths who will upgrade different ways. Like this guy just upgrades a weapon, and there's another smith later on who imbues it with elemental stuff.
In general, I think that the way that the upgrade system works is stronger, and more intuitive. The weapon just has a strength, but you can also add an element to it. There's and same thing with trading boss weapons. I have Quelaag's soul. It can turn into a weapon. Oh, but you have to have a +10 scimitar to do it.
Right.
Nope. You can just trade it for the weapon now.
Yeah.
And both those things I think are kind of huge, lower friction changes.
Yeah.
To the game.
Consider it.
Yeah. Right now, we can't get in there and do any of that because we have to go get that key, which we mentioned. But when we do, we talk to him. And one little story he has is he talks about kind of setting down roots.
Right.
And he mentions this daughter who goes gallivanting around, who we'll meet later. And he wants her to settle down. He cautions you against being her.
Right. And again, people making Majula their home.
Yep. Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah, which again, shows just a little bit of a softer side to this world. It gets pretty bleak pretty quick, but just the idea that that there are people who have enough hope to we might as well try and make a home as we lose our minds, right?
Yeah, yeah, yep. Next, we come to my favorite NPC. There's an armor or two that you can see in the way here, but he's not very interesting.
Yeah.
You can catch on the way. He just kind of geographically is closer. And he just, failed in his home area and moved here.
Yeah. His thing. So Malin is his name. He stutters. And he's from an area called Volgan. And he actually gives a little bit of background to it. So it's less we are a proud race of knights. With stealthy sorcery arts. It's less of that. It's more it's a really bustling trade town. And he kind of gives a little bit of a lowdown on these blue sentinels, who are the companions to the way of blue people, saying they're kind of like mob bosses. They're shaking everybody down. In order to do business there, you have to be able to bribe. I couldn't afford to do it. And then ultimately, he admits he actually has no idea why he's here.
Right, which is huge. Like, every character is losing their memory.
Right.
Yourself included, which we're introduced to in the cutscene. You run into a lot of people who tell that story.
Yeah, and he's like Domhnall from Dark Souls 1 in that he will trade, or he will sell you boss armor as you defeat those bosses.
Or as you spend more money in his shop.
Yes.
His inventory changes, which is the other big thing. It should be noted, too, like, just because there's nowhere else really to talk about it. I guess we talk about it next episode. But when you're buying his stuff, 100% physical block shields are incredibly rare.
Right.
And you don't get one for a long time. Like, when I first saw his inventory, I was like, where's my fucking heater shield? I need something light and perfect.
Yeah.
And it never comes. So, that's a real big change that'll kind of come into focus next episode, I guess.
Yeah.
But we'll move on to my favorite NPC.
Shalkor the Sweet. Or Sweet Shalkor.
Yep, who is a cat. Like, just it looks like a house cat, not like a big creepy Alvina Cheshire cat. Just a cute house cat. When I first walked in, she was sharpening her claws on the wall. Exactly, and I could have looked over and saw my exact cat doing that exact thing. Not narrating to me. But I love Sweet Shalkor. There's an interesting little bit of lore with her. She sells you a ring that's cat related that talks about how cats, if they live long enough, eventually they transcend mortality and become, kind of godlike beings. And you can't kill her. If you try to kill her, she just laughs and says to keep trying. She is definitely a supernatural creature.
Yeah, much like Alvina, except less freaky.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
And the Green Maiden, sorry, the Emerald Herald, bleh. She, that's funny, Green Maiden, Black Maiden. No, she mentions, like, that small thing over there in the ruins, she's an ancient thing who has nothing but contempt for humans. And that is the funniest thing. Like, she loves, your undead smell. And she always, delights when the suffering of others.
Yeah, and she teases you about it, too. Like, she pretends not to recognize you, and then says, just kidding, like, essentially. Yeah. It's really, like, something that we'll reveal as we kind of go through this. This game has a much looser sense of humor than Dark Souls 1 does.
Yeah.
There are item descriptions that are straight up, like, pretty funny in this game, and there are little touches like her that, and, specifically an NPC that we run into in Hades Tower of Flame that are really hilarious.
Yeah.
More so than in Dark Souls 1 or Demon Souls. Like, this game, it's kind of balancing out that bleakness with, a lot more humor, which is just is a little bit strange, but I like it, and I like the way that she works with this. She is the one warning about the other covenant in this area that you should not join.
Although I love stories about people joining it accidentally and not knowing what the fuck.
Yep, it sounds cool.
Yeah,
like I want to be a champion. Champions rule.
Yeah,
that sounds great.
I want to kneel before Victory Rock.
Yeah. Is this metal?
Yes, it is metal.
Yeah. And there's some Homeward Bones up there. Yeah, and of course I want to go up there. It seems great.
It's a great place to be.
But nope.
Nope.
Yeah, I definitely joined it the first time on accident, but unjoined it. I went up here before I went to the Way of the Blue. So I joined it and then immediately left it for the Way of the Blue. Thank goodness. So I never got the ill effects of it.
Right. Yeah, and this one you are collecting awe stones by defeating invaders for the privilege of working up towards getting a ring that makes hand to hand more effective.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, this is the man covenant.
Yeah,
like this is to be to be a strong manly dude, berserker. It's essentially a challenge mode. There are lots of ways that you increase the challenge yourself in this game. This and bonfire ascetics, which we'll talk about when we first run into them.
Right.
But it's hard mode. You got in the notes here is Gravelording yourself, which is very similar.
Right.
So.
Yeah, and there are just a couple of other features in the area, most notably the gigantic pit.
Yeah. They built a town around a pit.
Yeah.
And there's this is the first point where I learned that fall damage is different. Because there's a jump you could definitely make in Dark Souls or Demon Souls down there, but there's just a huge pile of bloodstains next to it. And just phantoms falling to their death.
Can you quantify how fall damage is different, just for people who don't know?
It's just harsher. Okay. In Demon Souls, you can fall a really long way without dying, especially in phantom form. In Dark Souls, fall damage is based on a percentage. So, even at soul level 1, you can either make a jump or you can't. Here, I still think that the percentage thing may still be true, but it might be closer to what it is in the well in Kingsfield, where like having enough health is really, that what will get you through this fall, or being able to slow your fall through an item.
Right.
But falling is just more serious in this game.
Yeah.
So,
and if you're not careful, you're just going to straight up fall right into this thing.
yep, which complements that kind of less vertical design that we mentioned. If it still had that same kind of verticality, it would be pretty obnoxious
Right.
that falling was such a bigger deal. But a lot of the places are a bit more horizontal.
Yeah.
So.
Boy, I feel like we've talked a lot about the Things Betwixt and and Majula.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, this was a long episode. But those are the tutorial and the hub area. We'll be coming back to the hub area as things change about it. But next we are going to go down the little hidden passage, go through a little lever puzzle, and eventually get to the Forest of Fallen Giants.
Yeah.
Which continues the Dark Souls Souls game trends of amazingly well designed first areas.
Right.
Just very, very well designed, clever first areas.
Yeah, it's funny that all the paths off of Majula have airlocks.
Yeah, yeah.
Which
Well,
is-
I think it has to do with that. Yeah, that kind of that space thing. I wonder if you're what you're actually traversing
Right.
there, since we know you're going to essentially what would be the equivalent of a much further distance.
Right.
That space is spacey wacy thing. It's also there are fewer areas to go to right from the bat.
Right.
In this, Dark Souls, you're open in the beginning and close, or open at the end, and open in the beginning, and you kind of have a middle section with Anor Londo and Sense Fortress that's locked. Here's the opposite of that. You
Right.
are closed at the end and closed in the beginning, and the middle is the open.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's guiding you towards the Forest of Giants. However, you do have the option to go to Hyde's Tower, and if you want to farm souls, you can get into the pit. But not everything is open to you right away. There is a sequence that it is that is gently massaging you into, but it doesn't take that much to get to where all 4 areas are open to you.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So that's it for this episode. Let's hit some admin.
Thank you for listening. If you are a first-time listener, we welcome you into the fold. We are all excited about Dark Souls 2, and we are excited to kind of discover it with you. If you have any thoughts on our next area, so the way we do this is kind of strange. It's too late right now to respond on Things Betwixt and Majula because we are recording those responses kind of at the same time here. But we'll let you know about the deadline for responding about the Forest of Fallen Giants. That said, still write in. Just know that you may not get on the show if you're not talking about the particular area that we are looking into.
Yeah, and the place we'll let you know about that is our Facebook page, which is blowing up. Not several times a day, someone posts an interesting video or link there or thought. It is becoming a great place to talk about Dark Souls 2. Yeah. So you should definitely like Bonfireside Chat on Facebook if you are the Facebook persuasion. Because it's where I like to talk about the game and where other people do as well.
Right.
So.
Yeah. Let's see here. You can write in. That's Duckfeed.tv/contact. And right now is a very important time for us on iTunes. If you are a person who uses iTunes, rating and reviewing us right now in the midst of this flurry of activity. First, if you have rated us, thank you. A lot of people have been doing that, and we've kind of been blowing up there. But it's not too late to continue keeping us on that front page and helping people discover us. Which is, as interest in Dark Souls 2 is up, we want everybody to know that, hey, we're completely rolling on it.
Yeah, yep. And if you don't like iTunes, you should definitely tell your friends or tell a blog or, tell an internet.
Yeah.
Just walk up to the internet, let it know. Whisper in its ear. All of that stuff is, super useful. This is the most important time for the show as far as stuff like that goes. It's also, if you're just now discovering us, maybe you'd like some other stuff that we do.
Yeah.
So, I would recommend going to Duckfeed.tv. We have a lot of other shows there that I think that if you like this one, there's a good chance you'll like those as well.
Yeah.
Watch out for Fireballs is probably the flagship one, which is a retro video games book club style podcast.
Yeah. Additionally, there is Abject Suffering, which both Gary and I do, which is kind of a bad games show that is nominally about bad games and mostly about whatever we want to talk about. Kind of a comedy themed kind of thing.
Yeah, which is lots of fun. There is a show called The Level, which is a video game roundtable show that Cole mentioned earlier that he does with some buddies from college. Kind of an audio magazine about games, newer games, what you've been playing. Just kind of runs the gamut and is well worth their time.
Yeah, and Gary has several comedy shows that are on there, such as The Pitch, Pilot Season, Dead Idea Valhalla, that are all very much worth your time, and evergreen, so you can listen to them even though they're not currently updating at the moment.
Yep, and it's also a good, and also there's Those Damn Ross Kids, which is Cole's comedy show that he does with his brother, structured around weird news stories and also just kind of banter. Yeah. So if you want to hear a relationship, also since a lot of people may, if you want to follow me on Twitter, you can do so at Gary Buh. That's GaryBuh.
Mm-hmm. And I am at Kole Ross. That is KoleRoss.
Yeah. And I'm just take this one little opportunity. We won't do as big a pitch section for every episode of the show, but because I know there are probably a lot of new listeners, if you there's a couple things for sale at the Duckfeed store. I made an album in Mario Paint last summer. It's $5. It's 50 songs all done in Mario Paint Composer. I'm also available to do freelance music. So as I'm trying to do a little bit more freelance work as we're going into summer. So if you have a podcast or anything like that, and you're looking for someone to do music, I am available for that. And I also have writings up on the yearbookoffice.com. So if you're interested in reading my writing, you can go there, and I have articles up there occasionally.
Yeah, and I haven't updated it as much recently just because of Dark Souls 2 times, but there is Hexcrank, which is a blog on the network that is dedicated to survival horror games, which may be of interest to the skeleton-minded.
Yes, and we know that you're a skeleton-minded. So that is a very long admin section, but
can I get one
well
more
done
in?
If I don't say so myself.
Can I get one more in? If you want to support the network financially, the best way to do that right now is to go to Duckfeed.tv/tipjar and use the Amazon link. You can click that, and we get a little kickback from everything you buy. Doesn't cost you anything extra. You get the same Amazon experience, and that goes towards helping us do cool stuff, such as continue doing the show.
Yeah, it's very appreciated.
Yeah.
So the show doesn't, we don't really make money off the show, but it doesn't cost us money, and that's because of people doing that.
Yeah.
So let's wrap it up.
Let us wrap it up.
Yeah. Until next time. Praise the sun, therefore try butt thrust. So sorry.
Seek misery, lest this land swallow you whole.
Lest it swallow you whole.
Good night.
And we all pray that we will have far more soon